What up? What up? Good morning. Welcome to JUCO Hoops Insider with All Access Network. Got a special kind of interview lineup today. So we're going to start with one of the veterans in the game, 24 years as head coach, Coach Todd Franklin, head coach at Vincennes Junior College. So, Coach, welcome.
Glad to be here, man.
Glad to have. Oh, sorry about that.
All right.
Okay. So, so tell us about the 24 years, junior college. Tell us about your team now. We'll let you kind of roll.
Experience, that's for sure. Started out at Southeastern Illinois. Took a job that they hadn't been very good. We're coaching on the rubber floor. I took on the job 2 weeks before the season with no team, no uniforms, no balls. Started the year off with some crazy things happen. Been through it all. But JUCO isn't for everybody, but it's been a great ride. We've had great teams. We had great teams at Southeastern. Great players, guys like Dante Smith who went to the NBA. A lot of trips to Hutch and Final Fours, and made a lot of great friends in that small town of Harrisburg, and brought it over here to Vincennes and took over a program that was just the exact opposite, with a tremendous history, but probably needed to get it going again. And we've been fortunate enough to get it going and go to 8 straight, which is a record. Trips to Hutch, won the last national championship that was played, and again, been with great guys and great players. So it's been a great run for me, but it's been a wild run. When you're in JUCO for 23, going on 24 years, it's you've seen some things.
Yeah, you definitely see some things. Congratulations on that national championship. Tell us about that team in particular. You've coached a lot of good ones. Tell us about that national championship team, if you don't mind.
Great team. And I think that's the key word there. There was a lot of guys that weren't rated very highly coming out of high school. We probably take more predictors than, most all the top 25 or 30 teams in JUCO do. That's just kind of the nature of what we do. So most of those guys were academic qualifiers, which meant they were, maybe a little bit better students, but they've been guys that weren't recruited in high school because they could have went, Division I, Division II out of. They weren't getting the offers. So, and that was true of that whole team. But they just, they came together. They played great basketball. They individually improved. They were the epitome of a team. From Lonnie Francis inside to Keith Clemens out to guard, to undersized George Dixon rebounding the ball, to the Craig Porters and Kevin Osaways, and all those guys are off into the Division I world now and being successful. But they just came together. They did a little bit of everything well. They moved the ball well. They defended well. Our defensive numbers were, held teams like 36, 37% shooting. We out-rebounded teams by, plus 10, 11. We averaged about 90 points a game, but only give up in the low 60s. Played a good schedule, played one of the toughest runs anybody's ever had to go through at Hutch, taking out Moberly, who was red hot at the time, Odessa, who was gigantic, South Plains in the semis, and then turn around the next morning on national TV and having to beat Billy Gillespie and Ranger. It was great. But I can't, express how much I love that bunch. They were the perfect team to win it.
Coach, talk about some of the history of Vincennes. I know you mentioned that. Some that may not know, you had several NBA guys, even a recent one that you coached. Talk a little bit about the history, team-wise and even individual player-wise, if you don't mind. All-Americans, NBA guys.
Vincennes, the history of Vincennes is not just, one of, if not the best in JUCO basketball history. It's one of the best in basketball history. You're talking about the greatest players that ever played, not the greatest JUCO players, the greatest players. You're talking about Bob McAdoo, who the young guys don't know, as well. But, that's one of the 50 greatest players that ever played the game. For about 3 years in his career, he was the best player on the planet. A couple-time MVP, scoring champion, rebounding champion. He was here. Ricky Green, who kept John Stockton on the bench for years, took Michigan to the national championship game. You've got Sean Marions that more people this generation would know, obviously. One of the great players and a world champion. Carl Landry's, who was in the league forever. Eric Williams, who's in the league forever. We've now added Michael Mulder to the list, who's with Golden State right now, is in his second year, who was a guy that nobody wasn't thought of. He's a mid-major Division I player coming out of high school, has made his way there. I think we've got 12 going on 13. We've got Big Romaro Gill, who's with the G League team with the Jazz right now. The 7'2" kid that was a defensive player of the year in Seton Hall last year, who really had never played basketball before he came here. So we may soon have 13, NBA guys, and those guys were not just, guys. They were studs at the next level. Foots Walker was an NBA All-Star. You can just go on and on. 3 national champions before the last one we won, but it had been a long drought between the third and now our fourth that we won in 2019. So it was great to be able to come back. And it's been a while since Vincennes had really won on the national level. It'd been 16 years since we'd won a game at the national tournament. They'd been, but they had won. It'd been 20 since we'd been to the Final Four. So when we went to that first Final Four 8 years ago, it broke the glass back again, making Vincennes back to what it's supposed to be. And, we're pretty proud of getting it up there where it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. As you should be, Coach. And it's not easy to do. I've been blessed to coach in junior college 5 years, almost 25. Talk about how challenging it is from the role of the head coach, not only leading your own program day to day, but also just the competition level. You talked about NBA guys. You talked about guys like Bob McAdoo, Sean Marion, Mulder, who's in the league now. So NBA players at that level, which people don't really expect, but also the players you're playing against, and then just how you have to manage every day. Talk a little bit about the JUCO life, Coach.
Well, the talent level is extremely high. I mean, we say it all the time. It's the second biggest college basketball national championship is the JUCO national championship.
Yep.
I mean, the NCAA Division I, obviously, but everything else, they're not the same level of player. And I've coached in NCAA Division II and got great respect for it. I did it for 6 years. It's not the same level. I mean, it's not the same level of players. Now, we got to restructure the team every year.
Right.
So, early in the year, it may not look as pretty, but you talk about getting into the second half of the season when those young guys and those guys start playing right, combined with their talent. I mean, it is what it is. We got to get through. Logan last year's got Jay Scrubb. I mean, he's a second-round pick in the NBA draft. I mean, it's never ending like that. That's the talent level you have across the board, and if you're going to win it, that's what you have to do. The guys go right from us that we compete against to win a national championship, to the next level, and they're the studs immediately. And that's hard to do if you're a JUCO guy because you're leaving us and going to a whole new system. It's not that you're not good. Sometimes those JUCO guys get a bad rap that they're not ready. Well, they're not ready. They're moving to a whole new system and having to immediately be a starter. They don't even know the terminology, the things you're doing, et cetera. So I think sometimes it's not they're not ready. It's they're just adapting to whatever system that they have to go, which may be completely different than what they're doing. But talent level's off the chart. And everybody's trying to be competitive across the country. I mean, to win, there's 260 or 270 Division I teams around the country. Everybody's working hard. Men's basketball is probably in JUCO, it's kind of the glamour sport. So it's where everybody's putting their money and their time and their efforts into trying to be really good at. So I mean, it's dog eat dog. There's no question about that. And you better be. I tell everybody, if you can't compete in a mid-major Division I league with your team by January and February, if you can't play in the OVC or the Missouri Valley and be really competitive, and I mean really competitive, you have no chance of winning national championship in junior college.
Right. Very well said. Coach, what's some of the things you would say, like, if you had to say, we'll do a funny story at the end. We'll do a couple more, but what's some of the things you would say, like, misconception-wise about JUCO or something that somebody who's coached as long as you have and had as much success as you've had, what's something you would want people to know the truth about junior college, whether that's people recruiting, whether that's somebody you were recruiting, either way, just people in general, what would you want them to know the real about junior college?
I think as a longtime JUCO coach and now president of the Coach Association, I think I'd be, wrong not to say this. I think that the guys in JUCO that have done it for a while and have stayed at the very top in the country are some of the best basketball coaches in America. I don't care what level. The Jay Herkelmans and the Steve Greens and, Pat Smiths. And you go down the list, the people that have really done it, the stigma that somehow those guys couldn't go and take over Division I programs and win those leagues if they got, decent jobs is crazy. I've coached at all different levels. Those guys are as good as anybody in the country. And I think, unfairly, a lot of those guys are not given the chance to make that move. And it's been really bad for the Division I guys, because there's a lot of teams and a lot of leagues. Look at what Mark Adams and those guys are doing at Texas Tech.
Yep.
I competed against Mark twice in the national tournament in Elite Eight games, won one, lost one. 2 great games with them. I think if you let some of us who are the top guys in the country got those jobs, I think you'd see those guys winning their leagues. I think you see that pretty consistently. Those guys can really get it done. So I think that's the misconception. Somebody thinks that somebody can go from being a film guy, never leading a program, and he's better to lead a program than Jay Herkelman at Coffeyville or Stevie Green or those guys.
Right.
That's insanity. And we're seeing that every year. Guys get hired these jobs and say, well, he's been in Division I. Well, a lot of us have been in Division I at some point in time too.
True.
And I can tell you, what I did when I was in Division I as an assistant is nothing like what I have to do as a head coach in JUCO to get me prepared. So to think that prepared me to make the jump, I think is just ludicrous. And it's been something to keep these guys down. Whereas if you went in the old days, JUCO was used as a bridge, and you could prove you could really coach and recruit and develop those kind of players at that level. The Eddie Suttons in the old days, the Cotton Fitzsimmons, there was all kinds of guys that made that move and were obviously highly successful. Now we all get real bright and say, well, you can't do it if you haven't been here, doing film. I mean, I used to do film when you had to splice it. So I think I can handle that.
Before there was synergy and all this fancy stuff.
Yeah, so I don't. I think that's the big thing, or that there's not coaching going on. Yeah, right. I mean, that's crazy. Especially now, if you compare like Division I basketball with JUCO basketball now, I'll be real honest. JUCO head coaches who are really good and have run the programs that everybody expects to be good, because then you've done the same type things, right? You got to deal with the media, you got expectations, fans are watching. You have to go through all of it.
Yep.
You have to do it at that next level. Those guys, with the way the game is now, everybody transferring. You don't have guys 4 years. You got them, for a short amount of time. The JUCO head coaches that have done that are better trained to do that than anybody in the world. We've been doing that, and expected to lose our team and then be top 3 or 4 in the country again the next year.
Yep.
And then when you've had to do that and keep doing it, and anybody thinks that you just walk through, I mean, if Steve at South Plains every year is going to face a tough league, right, in his league, just like he would if he was in, a low to mid Division I league. He's got to reload and be back on top. Right. Every year I've got to come back out here and take on Logan and Wabash Valley and Swick, and you go down the list. Everybody has to do that. It's at the top level. So the preparation, I can't imagine anybody being more prepared for the way that college basketball is now to be successful than the JUCO guys.
Yeah, well said. And there's a lot of JUCO guys. You talk about Mark Adams, but even guys like Chris Jans.
Yeah, absolutely. Who hasn't done well?
Dana Altman, I believe, was a JUCO head coach. Bob Marlin was a JUCO head coach. We could go down the list. There's so many of them. Tell us about
which of those guys now? Steve Forbes.
Steve Forbes.
We compete against in the national tournaments with all those guys you mentioned. What guy, when given his chance? Now, a lot of times they make them go take, an assistant job at Division I and sit over there for a year, or 2, and then get a job. Well, they were ready when they left, obviously. But, which one of those guys has not been successful?
Right.
Jan's been successful. Forbes has been successful. Mark Adams and those guys have been successful. Tech.
Chris Beard, of course, was a JUCO head coach.
Yeah, when's it not? I mean, when have they not? So that should be a bet that all those guys are making. And I think, like anything, it could not work out, but I think it'll work out most all the time. I would be shocked if you put Kirk or Steve or one of those guys in a job. I leave myself out, put those guys in the job. And if I heard they were getting a decent job in one of those Division I leagues, I'm going to bet they're going to be in the top 2 or 3 in that league very, very shortly.
Right. Yeah, I think the perception in winning the press conference has so much to do with that. Coach, tell us two last things. Tell us about your team now, and then tell us one funny story before you go.
Break it up a little bit. What did you say?
I said, tell us about your team now, and then tell us one funny story.
Okay, my team now. We're still trying to figure my team now out. I mean, this new thing, I don't know. I mean, we're fortunate. We're 3-0. We've beaten two pretty good teams in Highland and Triton, which were two good wins for us at this point. You know, I think somewhere down the line we'd be a pretty good basketball team. But you know, it's a new bunch and a new year and a new thing, and a new preparation deal. We didn't do any scrimmages in the fall. Didn't do any summer work, which all that's new for us, and we didn't have any guards coming back. So we're trying to figure each other out. I think we've made some gains in the last week, but got a really good freshman in Justin Archer that's played really well for us early. You know, who's got some things done around the basket at this point. I think he can also stretch out some, but he's been good. Then it's been a bit. We're still trying to figure out who it all is going to be. You know, we've got a number of guys that could be good. You know, really athletic guy in John Yucamato that didn't do a whole lot as a freshman, but that's usual for us. And then he's come on here as a sophomore. You know, Randy Tucker's been around here. He's a third-year guy on the wing. It's played pretty well. But we're trying to figure out who our guards are going to be. We've got some guys with talent, but we're still trying to figure it out. But, you know, we're trying to catch up, I guess, to Logan now. They're ranked number one in the country. So we've kind of run things around here for a long time. So our guys are, you know, maybe a little bit have a little chip on their shoulder about that. But we'll see how it goes.
That's a good thing. Tell us one funny story, Coach, before we let you go.
Well, there's a lot of them. Some of them aren't, you know, probably good for the air. So I got to tone down and pick up the ones and one. I give one on myself here. We were playing Indian Hills. This is a typical JUCO story here. Now we're playing Indian Hills maybe 3 years ago. It all runs together after a while. We had a manager nicknamed Rubble after Barney Rubble, so you can visualize him right here. But his job was to make sure that you know, I got out of the locker room because I'm a little older and, you know, prostate's not as good as it should be. So I'm always going to get a little bit of business done before I hit the court because that half takes a long time. So I'm going in there. We're done. Everybody's jacked up. Big game, obviously, us in Indian Hills and big crowd. And, you know, it's the last meeting before we go out. It's probably 3, 4, 5 minutes on the clock. I go back to go to the bathroom. Now, Rubble's supposed to make sure that, you know, I'm the last one out. Well, Rubble got excited. So Rub leaves, and the way the doors are in Indian Hills, you lock it with the key from the outside. Okay. So I go over to the door, and the door, you got no handle in it. It's kind of a push-out door. They're in there, break my shoulder going out because it's locked. Now the clock keeps going. Rubble's excited, and he still hasn't noticed that old coach is not out on the floor. So I'm looking at my watch. The game is literally started. I'm still back here. I don't know when I'm going to get out. I don't know if I'm ever going to get out. Nobody's hearing me. I'm back in the bowels of the and finally, here comes Rubble. Somebody had told him, "Hey, where's Coach?" Of course, they said now Rubble, who's you know not the most svelte fellow you can imagine, but I got nicknamed Rubble, is sprinting across the court in Indian Hills. He goes right across the main court, sprinting over there because he got to get Coach out. He's white as sheet, unlocks the door, gets me out. And then to make the last part of the story, I'm coming out now. Like the Indian Hills fans are ready to give me heck anyway. So I come out now. I'm getting the big timer chant. Everybody's on me because you're big time this because you're coming out right. They tip off, blah blah blah. So we kind of went with that. So in JUCO, I don't think that happens every day. Probably didn't happen to Rick Pitino. Probably didn't happen to Cal. But in JUCO, you can be forgotten about and left in the toilet if you're not careful.
That's a perfect story, Coach. Great one to end on. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. Congratulations again on your national championship and all your success. And good luck this season.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be on.